Alright. Several of you have been asking about the other Tales of Atonement projects, like where does Chaotica come from, and what's the future like? Well, here's the thing you guys should know about me. I'm from the 25th century, but also from another dimension, where myths and stories are real events. King Arthur is a historical figure. Gods and goddesses are, or were, at one time overseeing humanity. Magic is real. Dragons exist. It's an alternate version of history, in which case a lot of myths or conspiracies were actually true, like the Y2K glitch. That's the starting basis for Tales of Atonement Glitch. This is a story set in the late 90s and follows two main characters separated not only by international borders, but by an entire continent. What if the Y2K glitch actually did what people feared it would? That is the devastating question our universe answers. Around the late 90s, an anxiety started spreading through the general public based on the potential effects of a computing glitch that was said to affect older computing systems. The fear was that because the year was coded in most computers as 19XX, with the variable being the year, this meant that when the year 2000 turned over, computer systems would read it as being 1900 and cause a computing error that would confuse thousands of computer systems worldwide, causing them to shut down. It was said this would shut down power grids, malfunction plane guidance systems, confuse weapon defenses, and cause everything from banks to prisons to freak out when their security systems failed. So think of that. What if, in 1999, the world ground to a halt? For North America, in the middle of January winter, before the effects of climate change had basically ruined the concept of a white Christmas. This is a telling of alternate history based on the dimension where Bree and I come from. For us, this is actual history. Enter our main characters. Arryn Tremblay is a young man from Vancouver, British Columbia. He comes from a multicultural household where his father is Cajun from New Orleans, Louisiana, right off the coast of Lake Pontchartrain. His mother is French-Canadian. Arryn's goal is St. Louis, Missouri, and he has little choice but to mostly get there on foot, by rundown car, or any way that he can. He's going there to meet someone, with plans to meet by the infamous arc known as the Gateway Arch. He'll have to face a ton of challenges that aren't just related to the weather. Factions like the Eagles, a fringe group of militant patriots who believe it's their goal to uphold American values in lieu of the American government. Some of them are military, some of them are cops, some of them are just homosexuals with time to kill and no accountability. What about wild animals? Problem being, we're talking more than just wolves, moose, and bears. What happens when the world shuts down and zoos can no longer care for the animals there? Lions, tigers, a pack of particularly irate emu? Anything's possible. As you can see, he's dressing fairly warmly and carries probably one of the most versatile tools to have in any apocalypse scenario, the trusty crowbar. I bet you didn't know there's actually a pretty significant literary history behind this tool either. Crowbar has some surprisingly old origins, going all the way back to the 1400s. It's thought that the reason they're called crowbars is their resemblance to the shape, beak, and feet of a crow. That's because even writers like Shakespeare make use of these. In Romeo and Juliet, Act 5, Scene 2, line 20, Friar Lawrence says, "Get me an iron crow and bring it straight unto my cell." He's talking about a crowbar. Iron crow is the original term. Another example shows in Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe in 1719. The November 17th entry states, "As for the pickaxe, I made use of the iron crows, which were proper enough, though heavy." Perhaps it's Crusoe that popularized crowbars in the use as a survival tool. Another type of tool that he could have probably made good use of is the hatchet. That was the case in the titular Gary Paulsen novel. Hatchet is a 1987 novel following the story of Brian Robinson, which bears a striking resemblance to Robinson and deals with a similar theme. Following a plane crash in the Catskill Mountains, Brian is forced to survive for months with nothing but a hatchet to start. This was one of my favorite young adult novels when I was younger. Brian's story of survival was a big inspiration for Arryn. While one deals more with man versus wild, Tales of Atonement glitch, at least from Arryn's perspective, is man versus society as it slowly starts to descend into feudal tribalism. So yeah, I can't suggest the book Hatchet enough, as well as the accompanying sequel, The River, in which Brian must return to the wilds, and this time follows his trials of transporting another injured human down a treacherous river on a completely wild-crafted raft. There's also an alternate ending to Hatchet called Brian's Winter that explores Brian's survival through the harsh winter months of the mountain climate. Definitely check those out if you want a good survival series that serves as a huge inspiration here. The building behind Arryn is a geodesic dome. A geodesic dome is a spherical or partial sphere structure with an internal framework of triangles that provides exceptional strength and stability for its weight. It was invented by Walter Bowersfield in 1926 for the Zeiss Planetarium. They are used for everything from greenhouses and emergency shelters to event spaces and homes due to their efficient use of materials and durability. The structure's triangular components distribute stress effectively, making them resistant to strong forces like wind and snow. What they're not so great at tanking is falling plane debris. That being said, it's still more than viable enough to use as an emergency shelter and a temporary place to stay for houseless people and travelers like Arryn who are navigating the new apocalyptic state of the country. On the night of December 31st, somewhere close to midnight, planes traveling inbound to Vancouver National Airport suddenly lost flight controls. Captain Felix Fife was able to take partial control of his aircraft, a Boeing 777, and attempted a controlled crash into the harbor at False Creek. While the water landing wasn't ideal, the alternative was coming up short and crashing either into the ship's docks or the city itself, which would have resulted in more casualties. Captain Fife was a skilled pilot with 30 years of flight experience and a former role in the Air Force, but the heaviness of the aircraft made control difficult. Despite his efforts, the left wing clipped the Science World dome and took a large chunk out of the dome before the plane finally crashed. Rescue efforts responded immediately, working hard in the dark with only flare lights and battery-operated lights. Many people were fished out of the icy waters, but Captain Fife and around 80 other survivors could tell the story of how the cabin just suddenly went dark. Not even warning lights came on, and security measures did not engage. Panic ensued as the plane began to descend, and dozens clung to anything they could. The crash happened at around 12:20 a.m. on January 1st of the year 2000 and resulted in around 120 casualties. Those that did survive were housed within the geodesic dome known as Science World. Now, remember when I said Walter Bowersfield invented geodesic domes? There's a caveat here. The Science World Dome was built based on designs by Buckminster Fuller. Despite Bowersfield patenting the dome designs in Germany a full 26 years prior to Fuller, Fuller's American patents never mentioned Bowersfield by name. As such, he was erroneously credited with the invention, and his designs quickly became the most iconic. Fuller strove to create a dome that was, quote, continuous tension, discontinuous compression. Basically, it was able to sustain its own weight with no practical limits. In this way, he was able to create a full sphere geodesic structure in 1959 with the help of his students. These continuous tension, discontinuous compression structures featured single force compression members that did not touch each other and were suspended by tensional members. That sounds like a lot. Here's a simpler example. Have you ever seen one of those tensegrity builds on YouTube? Go look it up, because the way these people put together these objects to kind of support their own weight looks like freaking magic. Look at this chair, or this speaker stand, maybe even this table. It's not floating, and no, those aren't solid rods. Instead, the device is designed to hold a certain level of tension that keeps the separate parts from touching while still maintaining a solid structure. Another place this application works is with suspension bridges, like that famous one in California, or the Galloping Gertie in Washington, named that way for how the bridge likes to bounce around in the wind. If you've never been driving from Bremerton to Gig Harbor and felt the wind suddenly push your car into the next lane, sorry, you don't know panic while driving. Anyway, this is the same technology that allows us to make fully spherical structures like the dome at Science World. And this was the design chosen specifically for the 1986 World Expo in Vancouver, Canada. The expo was transportation and communication themed and coincided with Vancouver's centennial celebration. The initial idea was to have a modest 80 million transportation exposition that would mark Vancouver's 100th anniversary. It soon blossomed into a full exposition thanks to the help of the Vancouver Exposition Commissioner General at the time, Patrick Reed. The theme of transportation and communication led to the conglomeration of many different exhibits of transportation networks. This included a 3.5-mile monorail line that glided over the crowds and included a trip to every zone. Other ground transports included the SkyTrain, a high-speed surface transport from Japan, and French People Mover. The transport of the sky was the gondola, a boxcar hovering high in the air. The water taxis moved along 4 different ports on the site. The geodesic dome was designed by Expo's chief architect Bruno Freschi to serve as the fair's expo center. Construction began in 1984 and was completed by early 1985. After the expo closed its gates in October of the following year, an intensive lobbying campaign was launched to secure the landmark building, relocate the Arts, Science, and Technology Center into the post-expo dome, and convert the expo center into Science World. With much government backing, the dome was obtained from the province, and a massive fundraising campaign ensued. Donations from the federal, provincial, and municipal governments, the GVRD, the private sector, foundations, and individuals contributed $19.1 million to build an addition to the Expo Center, redesign the interior, and fabricate exhibits. In 1988, in a 4-month preview, over 310,000 visitors came to see the new building. A year later, the 400-seat OmniMax Theater in the upper section of the dome was opened, extending upon the 3D IMAX Theater, which was built in 1986 for the Expo Transitions film series, according to Wikipedia. World fairs like this are a significantly cultural event. In 1791, Prague organized the first World's Fair in Bohemia, modern-day Czech Republic. This was on the occasion of the coronation of Leopold II as King of Bohemia. The exposition was held in the Clementinum, a historic complex of buildings in Prague which houses the National Library of the Czech Republic, and celebrated the considerable sophistication of manufacturing methods in the region during that time period. France also had a tradition of national expositions, most notably the French Industrial Exposition in 1844 held in Paris. This fair was followed by other national expositions in Europe. In 1851, the Great Exposition of the Works of Industry of all nations was held in the Crystal Palace in Hyde Park, London, the United Kingdom. It was the idea of Prince Albert, Queen Victoria's husband. The character of world fairs or expositions has evolved since. 3 eras can be distinguished: the era of industrialization, the era of cultural exchange, and the era of national branding. The first era, the era of industrialization, roughly covered the years from 1850 to 1938 and set the basic character for the World Fair. In these years, world expositions were platforms for state-of-the-art science and technology from around the world. Inventions such as the telephone, phonograph, and more modern ones like the dishwasher, X-ray machine, and electric streetcar were all first unveiled during these kind of expos. The 1939 and 1940 New York World's Fair, and those that followed, took a different approach, one less focused on technology and aimed more at cultural themes and social progress. For instance, the theme of the 1939 fair was Building the World of Tomorrow. At the 1964 to 1965 New York World Fair, it was Peace Through Understanding. At the 1967 International and Universal Exposition in Montreal, it was Man in His World. These fairs encouraged effective intercultural communication along with sharing of technological innovation. In this era, event organizers retired the term World's Fair in favor of Expo, a term already popular in French language and used as far back as the Brussels World Fair in 1958. The 1967 International and Universal Exposition in Montreal was promoted under the name Expo 67 for this reason. And the Montreal Expos, a former Major League Baseball team, was named after the 1967 fair. Starting with World Expo 88 in Brisbane, and for every expo onwards, countries started to use these fairs as a platform to improve their national image through their pavilions. Finland, Japan, Canada, France, and Spain are cases in point. A major study by Djago Walvis called Expo 2000 Hanover in Numbers, showing that improving national image was the main goal for 73% of the countries participating in Expo 2000. Pavilions became a kind of advertising campaign, and the Expo served as a vehicle for national branding. For example, Spain used Expo 92 and the 1992 Summer Olympics in Barcelona in the same year to underscore its new position as a modern and democratic country after joining the European Union in 1986, the same year as the Vancouver Expo, in which, interesting to note, as part of Expo 92, Spain constructed the first high-speed rail in Spain going from Madrid to Seville, where the Expo was being held. That part's not entirely important to the picture, but I just thought the mirror of transportation being a recurring theme in both expos was a very nice coincidence. Though I should mention that Spain did take part in Expo 86. Their pavilion was well received architecturally, though some of its artistic and cultural displays were criticized for being overly folkloric. No such thing if you ask me, but then look at the kind of channel I run. Anyway, now watch the United States to scramble for hosting a World Fair or World Expo sometime by 2030 to try and shake off the rot that's been happening since the 1980s. That's not me talking as someone from 400 years in the future or anything. Promise. Tales of Atonement Glitch is a supplement to the World of Monomyth, in that they take place in the same universe, but some 600 years apart. As such, it shouldn't be expected that you'll see anything about Martin, Madeline, Shane, or Alden in this story. But that doesn't mean you should skip it. Many different parts join together into something greater, and more impressive than themselves. And the characters in Glitch set the staging ground for the present-day story of Tales of Atonement. So I hope you give it a shot. Starting soon, I'll be hosting the first chapter of Glitch on the Tales of Atonement Patreon page, so you might want to head over there. You can join for free as an observer, and when something you see strikes your fancy, toss a coin to your tuber and jump into the story wherever you like. I want to thank every one of you once again this week for coming to these ramblings of an anxiety-ridden pyromancer.
And her dragon best friend. We're a small team just doing our best to bring our stories we've loved for decades, and hope they're the kind you like too.
With a side info dump of psychology, lore, history, and social awareness.
If this is your first video, we hope you'll stay for another one. And maybe you could consider becoming a subscriber. We'd love to see you again.
Our subscribers can move mountains for a channel like this. The engagement we get just keeps growing each week. You guys are getting the word out and people are listening.
And we really can't express how grateful we are to see our passion project take off. 20 years of love and dedication are here laid bare. Help as much as you care to, but at least watch and talk with us.
Of course, we can't close out a video without giving a shout out to our patrons. Emily Masternardi,
Heinrich 28,
Pammy Poo,
JC Moreland,
Shadow Fox,
Charles Tam,
Arya Gamari,
Lundair Lumen. But also don't forget our channel members. Moose Now.
Jack McLeod.
Plebe 64 Potato.
Lunder Lumen.
7 Stars Sanctuary.
And Chained Furry. Many a mickle, max a muckle.
See you next week.